But in America, we now have the tyranny of the minority. The minority rules. The minority rules each party, and then the winning party, as a minority of the country, rules the country.
For people who don't follow that, when you say the minority rules the party, I mean, I can look at the dysfunction in the Republican Party as proof here in Colorado, and I can look at the Democratic socialists who are wreaking havoc on the Democratic Party and go, there. And both of these extremes seem completely out of touch with the common sense of Colorado.
It's absolutely looking at it the right way. We brag about our turnout in the general election, 72%, right. 73%, and we should. And we get some great statewide races. But for legislative races, there's virtually no competition. And so the primary determines the outcome. The general election is irrelevant because one party or the other dominates in every district, in 90% of the districts. And in that primary election, which determines 90% of who's going to be winning in the end, we have about 22% turnout. So it's only the far left and the far right that show up for the primary, because the far left and the far right have vastly disproportionate power. The legislatures of America at the state level and the federal level no longer represent a majority of the electorate. So the most fundamental precept of democracy, that the majority has certain decision-making rights, certain direction-determining rights. Not absolute, there need to be qualifiers, but they're supposed to be the primary decision-maker. Well, that's not what we have now, and that's fundamentally unhealthy. And the problem with the far left and far right, whether it's at the state level with a blue trifecta like Colorado, or nationally, where right now it's a Republican trifecta, those party-dominated primaries and elections lead to policies that do not reflect the wishes of a majority of the American people time and time again.
Probably the most fascinating guy in Colorado politics and policy. I say policy because you haven't run for anything, but you have changed so much of Colorado's public policy. Kent Thiry, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
All right, so let's just dive into the big one. You tried to pass this. I think was the only time you put something on the ballot that didn't win, just to show your. We have open primaries because of you. We've got all sorts of. Laws. I'm trying to remember. Oh, the redistricting.
Redistricting initiative,
huge.
Anti-gerrymandering.
Right. All of them very, how to put it, not left or right, but all about the mechanisms of how we do politics in Colorado. And you tried to bring in a initiative that would give us ranked choice voting and an open primary system where it doesn't matter what party you are or no party at all. There's all one big party for a primary. Colorado didn't seem ready for that. Well, what did you learn?
Well, we got awfully close. We got 47.5%. And so on a complicated concept, it was in many ways a victory, except the most important way. It didn't actually.
Well, let's remember.
Didn't actually win.
My beloved taxpayer bill of rights took 3 times.
There you go. Yeah. And so what happened? It's very clear from the exit surveys we did and other conversations that it was too complex. The fact that there was a trifecta, part 1, an all-candidate primary. Right. People loved that. Step 2, the top 4 advance. People confused by that. And part 3, ranked choice voting, which people that have it love. But the combination of the trifecta was too much complexity. And so a lot of people liked it, but couldn't quite in the last moment pull the trigger.
And I really supported the first part. I had questions about the second part. You and I talked about that at length when you were doing it. But let me talk about the first part. You passed several years ago an initiative that allows unaffiliated independent voters to vote in either the Republican or Democratic primary. I voted against this. I thought it was a terrible, terrible idea. And in retrospect, damn, am I glad you put that on. I look at where I live in Boulder, and there are no Republicans who run. In the last election, literally, there was one Republican running for one seat. So the primary didn't even exist. By being unaffiliated, I was able to vote in the Democratic primary. I like that. I believe we need to reform our primary system. And that first part of having an open primary scares people on the left, it scares people on the right. I am very intrigued and I want this to happen. Why do you want it to happen?
Because democracy should, by and large, be the majority ruling. Should be the majority making the decisions. And you need to be very careful about structuring a government where minorities aren't dominated, where there's not the tyranny of the majority. But in America, we now have the tyranny of the minority. This is going back to de Tocqueville, a French scholar who was amazed at the vibrancy of the American economy and American politics, and very much respected the balance between majority and minority. But in America now, the minority rules. The minority rules each party, and then the winning party, as a minority of the country, rules the country.
For people who don't follow that, when you say the minority rules the party, I mean, I can look at the dysfunction in the Republican Party as proof here in Colorado, and I can look at the Democratic Socialists who are wreaking havoc on the Democratic Party and go, there. And they both of these extremes seem completely out of touch with the common sense of Colorado. I offer that as an example. Do you see more?
It's absolutely looking at it the right way. We brag about our turnout in the general election, 72%, right. 73, and we should. And we get some great statewide races. But for legislative races, there's virtually no competition. And so the primary determines the outcome. The general election is irrelevant because one party or the other dominates in every district, in 90% of the districts. And in that primary election, which determines 90% of who's going to be winning in the end, we have about 22% turnout. So it's only the far left and the far right that show up for the primary, hence the power of your observation.
Well, and for those of us who live in districts that are controlled by one party, I live in Boulder. Some people live out on the Eastern Plains. It's a different party. I don't have any choice. So in Boulder, you have a choice between a hardcore socialist and nobody. And the primary, you might have a hardcore socialist and a more moderate Democrat. I would love to see those two make it to the end of the ballot, because then I think the moderate is going to win.
And that's where we want to end up. We want to pass, in the future, coming to a theater near you soon, would be an initiative to fully open our primaries. In 2016, we did what you talked about, where an independent who couldn't vote at all got to choose between a Democratic or Republican ballot, but had to choose. When in fact, in Colorado, 50% of our voters are independent, more than Democrats and Republicans combined. And we're the ones paying. These are our elections, not the party elections. If they want to set all their own rules, they can. Let them pay for it. And so we want to give Colorado voters now the second half of that open primary, where you get one ballot, everybody's on it, and I, as a Colorado citizen, and you can vote for whoever the hell we want, independent of party, because all the names are on one ballot, and we get to vote for the person, not the party, by office. That's a fundamental right that Coloradans want and deserve, and we want to get it for them.
All right, you're new here, all right? I grew up in Colorado.
16 years.
It's yesterday to me. All right, so you don't understand Colorado. Actually, I'm curious. I believe Colorado politics are so out of step with the average Coloradan. And I don't think that fellow conservatives understand in Colorado that this is not going to become an anti-abortion state anytime soon, or an anti-cannabis state, or an anti-gay state, or an anti-environmental state anytime soon. But it seems as though the left doesn't realize, wait a second, this is not a pro-tax state. This is not a pro-regulation state. This is not a pro-crime state. I don't even think it's a pro-woke state. And so there is something in the middle. I don't want to call it libertarianish with a small L because that scares people. But I really think that's still the character of Colorado if Colorado had a chance to vote on it. What do you think?
Total agreement. I hate agreeing with you so much, but I can deal with it maybe for a moment. Right. But it's so true. Right now, our state legislature does not reflect our state, period. And that's why you see the dramatic difference in what happens with initiatives where the people vote compared to the legislature where the people don't get to vote. And this is why some legislators try to muck around with our citizen ballot rights, because they don't like the fact that every now and then the electorate rises up and says, no, a majority of us want to protect Tabor. A majority of us want moderate taxation. A majority of us, whatever.
Let me ask some personal questions, if you don't mind. You have a little bit more money than I have. Get the hell out of here. You have a little bit more money than I have. Why are you spending so much money on this stuff? If I understand, you've got investments in DaVita and all sorts of, I don't see any of this stuff bringing you any more money. And you keep going after these initiatives that seem to piss off both left and right. I'm curious about the personal motivation. Do you have nothing better to do with your life? I've seen your wife, she's gorgeous. Why aren't you living on some island someplace instead of putting your time and resources into these type of initiatives? And again, you've only lost one.
Three things, I guess. Number one, we've been very financially fortunate in our life. We worked hard, very hard, but we also had some good luck. And the way our economy works, we were able to build up a nice net worth. Number two, we happen to be in the camp where we think people who've been well-to-do should give most of their money away before they die. Put that money to work for society, separate from what they want to leave for their kids. And third, we can't think of anything better than to spend our hard-earned money on but democracy. I mean, I believe in democracy. I respect the fragility of democracy. And the greatest gift that I can give to my kids and grandkids and other people's kids and grandkids is to restore a healthy democracy. And that's doable, and it's feasible, and it would change the lives of millions of people in a positive way.
Do you think we don't have a healthy democracy right now?
I think our democracy right now is unhealthy.
Explain.
Because of the way the system works, because the far left and the far right have vastly disproportionate power, the legislatures of America at the state level and the federal level no longer represent a majority of the electorate. So the most fundamental precept of democracy, that the majority has certain decision-making rights, certain direction-determining rights, not absolute, there need to be qualifiers, but they're supposed to be the primary decision-maker. Well, that's not what we have now, and that's fundamentally unhealthy. And the problem with the far left and far right, whether it's at the state level with a blue trifecta like Colorado, or nationally, where right now it's a Republican trifecta, those party-dominated primaries and elections lead to policies that do not reflect the wishes of a majority of the American people time and time again.
Remember Margaret Thatcher saying something along the lines of, I hate consensus. Consensus is not what we should be looking for. We should be looking for somebody to win a policy and someone to lose a policy, not ruining a policy by molding it into mush that satisfies no one. And I think about these trifectas and I go, well, wait a second, we got a great tax law because of a trifecta on the national level. And we've got terrible laws here, which I think are going to destroy the state because of the blue trifecta. Are you suggesting that policies should be moderate?
No. We don't expect, we don't even want everybody who runs for office, we don't care if there's a conservative and a liberal, and that they advocate strenuously for their conservative or liberal beliefs. We cherish that debate. But there are times when, even though neither side is in the middle, they meet in the middle when common sense dictates. So on things like immigration, if you took 1,000 Americans and put them in a hotel for a weekend, 95% of the time, that assembly would come back and say, oh, for immigration, we should have secure borders and we should take care of the people who were born here and have been working here for 20 years and paying taxes, et cetera. 1,000 Americans would agree on balanced, symmetrical immigration law in a weekend. And our legislatures, because most of the left and the right don't want to solve it because they run by criticizing the other side, we've gone 20 years without common sense and no-brainer reform that would have benefited everyone. Secure borders, but also retaining and attracting talent that helps us drive prosperity.
Getting back to personally doing this, listen, I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of rich guys put things on the ballot. I have never seen a guy like you who is as involved in the wording, in the deep thinking of is this good, is it bad? You and I have had fights over, no, you don't put the and there, you put an or there. No, and I've never seen somebody who gets into the minutia of it. Is this just because you're a controlaholic, or why is it that you're so into the weeds of this? It's not into the actual wording of every initiative that you've been involved with.
I was a CEO for 28 years of my life, and it was a good run. We did good things for patients, we did good things for the taxpayer, and we did good things for our shareholders. So it was a winning trifecta. But one of the keys, I think, to our success was our executives rolled up their sleeves and jumped into the ditch and shoveled with everybody else, and so that we could make decisions that reflected reality. And I've just brought that same philosophy to my work now on democracy, which is this stuff is tricky. Our founding fathers were brilliant, but they all were very well read. They debated for hours and came up with a system that's pretty damn impressive. But it took attention to detail. It took reflection. It took brainstorming. And so I think it's the only way to make sure that we're advocating for things that a clear majority of Coloradans would support. We need to deliver to them things that will actually have been thought through and will work mechanically and will deliver the desired outcomes.
What are your politics? If we were to put you on the scale someplace, at first glance, it looks completely schizophrenic. You're saving wilderness over here, but over there you're working for pro-business stuff, and then you're putting money into the Western Stock Show complex. By the way, thank you for doing that. That Legacy Center is gorgeous, and you were one of the founding gifts to make that happen. So, where are you just a dartboard and you just have I feel this way and I feel that way, or is there more of a theme that ties it all together?
In fact, I think I'm like most people. And we've almost lost this because the current system is so polarized, ideologically polarized, that people now sort of think of that as the norm. Most voters out there don't like to be put in the pigeonhole of you're a Republican and you believe in every single thing they believe in, and you're a MAGA Republican and that's what you think, or you're a Bernie Sanders liberal and you got to accept that entire package. That's not where most voters are. Most voters say, oh, I'm maybe fiscally conservative. I don't want anybody raising my taxes. But yeah, I think we should provide some child daycare for people that are low income. Well, there's lots of Coloradans who would believe in both of those things. Hard to find a party because the parties take these polarized positions. So I think I'm like most Coloradans, which is I've got some conservative positions, I've got some liberal positions, and on some stuff it's about governing. It's about making the thing work as opposed to continuously debating the thing.
Let's dive into Colorado politics for a second. For the last decade or so, this has been one-party rule. And I know the media loves to beat up on Republicans because it's so fun and it's so easy because they're so buffoonish in this state. And great, but they have no power. I don't know why we give them attention, because it doesn't matter if they're all in unison or they're all split up throwing spitballs at each other as they are. It doesn't matter. Colorado is controlled by one party. Every big city, the state, the courts, the governor's office, the legislature, it is all leftists. And I'm starting to sense that there is a battle brewing inside the left that people don't really look at or haven't noticed yet. There are the Democrats who believe in capitalism somewhere, and then there are hardcore socialists who are ripping apart what the goose that laid the golden eggs here. I remember governors like Lamb and Romer. Romer owned a business. I think of Hickenlooper. He owned a business. He understood basically that stuff. I don't see that right now. Talk to me about that split inside the Democratic Party. Is it solving? Is it going to break apart? How do you solve it?
Well, I think it is there, that there is, just like when the Tea Party emerged and the Freedom Caucus for the Republicans, for those that are political nerds out there, I think it is emerging where the Bernie Sanders wing, the socialist wing, has become prominent enough and loud enough and well-funded enough that you're getting a lot of other Democrats saying, "No, this is going to a bad place. I'm no longer comfortable. And I hate the fact I'm stuck that I can only pick one party's ballot because I'd like to send a message. I actually think this Republican would be better for this race, and for the rest of them, I'm going to vote Democratic. But I'd like to send a message."
Which used to be Colorado all the time. It was amazing how often we would split tickets on the state level. We'd have a Democratic governor, Roy Romer, and Bill Armstrong would win for United States Senate, or Hank Brown. And they were polar opposites, but the exact same people would vote for two different parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most Coloradans are like that. And the data we have from polling, it shows that most Coloradans want the right to vote for whoever they want. They want to vote for the person first and party second. Then you still have the ability, if you want to vote all D or all R, you can. You still have that existing right, but you get to mix and match. And when I think John Caldera is a better U.S. Senator than Fred Smith, I get to vote that independent of what party he's in. And that is more reflective of what the founders of our Constitution and Bill of Rights wanted.
The reason I support these open primaries is I think we're ready for independent or unaffiliated candidates to make it to the general election. That what you just said needs to be put to the test. Colorado Springs with an independent mayor, it shows in conservative Colorado Springs, maybe it's not just the party label, but they have a different system of running their elections. It is an open system. So I'm really looking forward to this. I hope you bring this to the ballot again. I don't know when you're going to do it, but it seems like you're pretty convinced that you are. And you're going to bring this part, the open primaries, without the ranked choice voting?
We'll make all the product decisions a little bit in the future. But the one part we're most passionate about that will certainly be in the mix is an all-candidate primary. That's what we want more than anything else. And then having the top two advance independent of party. And so if you're in a democratically dominated district, a Republican or an independent can say, Republicans don't have a chance, but I certainly would prefer that moderate Democrat to the Bernie Sanders candidate. And we're going to give all those Coloradans, which happens to be half the state, that right.
And by the way, I think while Trump is in office, a lot of these suburban districts, a Republican cannot win, even if he's pro-choice, even if he's pro-environment. I think that in those districts, an R behind your name is kind of like having a swastika. It's not fair that the label's there, but you're not going to win because in those districts, Trump is so hated. And until Trump is gone and the Republicans rehabilitate their thing, they're not going to win in those districts. I'm not talking about out on the plains or up in the hills, but that's the case. I hear that while we have now half of us are unaffiliated or independent, and that's just because we're all getting registered automatically, that we're not actually unaffiliated by choice. It's now the law is you're born, you get a driver's license, now you're a voter. And so even my son, who has Down syndrome and can't read or write, much like his old man, he's automatically a voter. It's great when they come to the door and ask for him to see their reaction. So really, this is just more liberals that call themselves unaffiliated because that's the way that is.
So I got so sick of hearing people claiming that this was just a function of the administrative process of getting a driver's license and nobody knew what they were doing. So I finally funded a poll that was done by a very thoughtful, rigorous group called Let Colorado Vote. And it showed that 85% of independents, and by the way, most prefer to be called an independent, not an unaffiliated. It's a positive statement of being damn independent. It's not some neutral administrative statement of being unaffiliated. I'm affiliated. I'm affiliated with America. I'm a damn affiliated. I'm super affiliated. And so 85% said, I chose to be an independent. It didn't just happen because of a default. It didn't just happen because it was administratively easy. I'm a damn principled independent.
So 15% could argue, well, 15% woke up one day and, I guess I'm registered and I'm an independent. Okay. But you're telling me 85%
Yes.
made a choice. I made that choice. And it was a decision. I did it live on air. I was doing a radio show and I went over and said, this is ridiculous. I want to vote in both primaries if I want. And you're convinced of these results?
Absolutely. And the survey was of Colorado independents, and 2/3 of Colorado independents, which again are half of all the voters, and in another 2 months it'll be more than half, more than D's or R's combined. 2/3 of them felt that they'd like the Democratic Party to be less extreme, to be more governance-oriented, and 2/3 also wanted the Republicans to be less extreme. And so you've got half the voters in the fricking state, each who overwhelmingly want both parties to get their act together and help achieve prosperity and security and educational opportunities for everybody and stop yapping about ideology and passing ridiculous laws.
I think Colorado is going to be the nation's first, I'll use the word unaffiliated. I'm starting to switch. I'm warming up to your term. Give me some time here. I think it's going to be the first unaffiliated independent state. What I mean by that is I think we are going to start seeing more legislative candidates become unaffiliated, win being unaffiliated. I think we're going to see more and more mayors unaffiliated. And I think Colorado is going to be a leader in a post-partisan era. I just feel it. The statistics bear it out in Colorado. I think Colorado is going to take the lead in that. Do you agree?
I think it could.
I know you work in other states as well.
Yes,
is there any other state?
We work nationally, and I think there are a few other states that have similar potential. And I'm hoping we all cross the finish line together, tied for first. In most cases, I want Colorado to be in first, but in this case, I'll take anybody, and if it's a five-way tie, I'll be very happy. But independents are the fastest growing political group across America, in blue states, in red states, in purple states, because Americans no longer feel that they're well represented by Congress nor by their local elected official. So I think Colorado has a chance to be amongst the leaders in this regard of restoring a vibrant American democracy.
I care about policy. I don't care about party. And for most of my life, you had to be involved with party in order to get the policies you wanted. When Governor Owens was governor, we got some incredible policies because we had the party that could make these choices. I still believe party is important when it comes to who has the majority in the House and Senate, because they choose the committee chairmanships, they choose leadership, and that's all that power. So independent legislators are going to have to choose a side to vote with for leadership. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's an independent. He's a socialist, but he caucuses with them. I think we've hit the point that if we want policy change, not just partisan change, but policy change, it's going to be the unaffiliated candidates who become politicians who drive it. I'm looking forward to that because I think Colorado needs saving. I think we're on the brink of economic collapse here if we keep doing these same anti-business policies.
I personally think it's going to be very slow to have independents starting to win elections. But with open primaries, a lot of R's and D's will start to behave in a way that's consistent with what the independents want, because there's so darn many of them, and we're going to give them back their voting rights. And so the great thing about how quickly things can change is that once we actually have a majority vote that matters again, you can have a lot of D's and R's that are run to a different place in the spectrum, because right now, I would say a very good chunk of the legislature is uncomfortable that if they vote outside their party, they're primaried by the far left or far right, and they lose their job. And some people get indignant about that and very critical of them. And I say, I don't know. I worked with a lot of CEOs who wanted to keep their job. And so let's not criticize someone for that. Let's not put them in a position where their choice is to lose their job or go along with a stupid ideological party line. And that's the place that the system puts them in now. And there's also just one other sign of hope. There's a thing forming, it has formed, called the Opportunity Caucus in our own legislature. A brave group of Democratic legislators from the state Senate and the state House who created the Opportunity Caucus because they felt the progressives in their party were doing more destroying of opportunity than creating it. And they've now created a group, much to the progressives' chagrin and much to their anger, and they're doing all sorts of retaliatory things that could make many of the things that you talked about start to happen.
Using that term, opportunity Democrats, they have been scared for so long. I've got 35 years in this world. The moderate Democrats have been bludgeoned into silence, I think, for fear of being canceled, for fear of being labeled something and then never winning again. Because the socialists, they're here for a revolution, man. They don't care what they break in order to get there. I look at our own governor, who is a smart guy, and he has signed on to policies that I know he despises. Personally, I know he's not an anti-gun guy, but we now have some of the worst anti-gun legislation. I know he's not pro-tax, but he put forward a bill or signed a bill that makes it almost impossible for me to put a tax decrease on the ballot now. And he signed on to regulating technology, AI. And oh my God, I don't know what horse trading forced him to do that, but he knows better and he's embarrassed by it. And he's hoping that Trump, of all people, and the Republicans save him from his bad decision with some sort of federal ban on states messing with technology, AI development. If you need an example of somebody who is an opportunity Democrat, I think our governor would be it.
I think that's right. Jared has been put in spots where he had to sign bills he didn't want to because he was testing the outer limits of how many things you can veto, how many things you can try to kill, and still get some other stuff passed. And so I think he's been uncomfortable with some of the things that he's had to sign. And yet it's horrifying that there's so much political pressure within the Democratic Party that can actually make those words true.
The man is a near billionaire. He's term limited. He's got nothing to lose, but still the power of that corrosive progressive edge of the extreme on that party, much like on the Republicans, but again, it doesn't matter on the Republican side in Colorado. Yes. It just doesn't matter. Here it does. Will this opportunity coalition, this opportunity caucus, are people going to actually sign on to this? Because I think deep inside there's a lot of moderate Democrats who want to, but are a little scared.
Oh, they're already signing up and have signed up. It's a group of about 18 already. That exists and is developing a coherent sense of mission and values and wants to make a policy difference. So it is happening out there. Brave people have taken the step despite a lot of criticism and a lot of retaliation.
Let's talk Trump for just a minute. Trump is a phenomenon we've never seen in our lives. Why? What do you think he taps into? What is the thing that has gotten him elected 2 times, 3 times? How did that happen?
Yeah, I don't pretend to have any special insight into this. And I would say that Andrew Jackson may have been quite similar. So maybe there's one other president in our entire history. But I think a part of it, ironically, is because of what we're talking about. Voters are so ticked off that each party is now more driven by ideology than feeling an imperative to get stuff done, that people were willing to break the mold and go with a pure populist demagogue. And is that because all those Americans are populist demagogues? No, a tiny percentage are. The rest are just so fed up with the conventional Ds and the conventional Rs that they finally said, okay, you 2 parties are giving us nothing in terms of managing the country in a way where my kids think they're going to do better than me. And so I've got to do something myself to break glass. And they could have broken glass on the left, they could have broken glass on the right. Either way, it's bad for America, but it reflects the fact that the conventional Ds and Rs have ceased being effective for the last 20 years.
Going back to your point about politicians being more loyal to party, when Lauren Boebert tries to get a veto override of a water project that serves Trump country, I mean, this is Trump country, the Eastern Plains of Colorado, these are Trumpies out there, and the Congress will not go along with it because they don't want to hack the man off. That's a lot of power.
Well, and here's where our congressional Republicans from Colorado need to become stronger negotiators. They should have held their vote for the big, beautiful bill hostage in exchange for making sure that Colorado was still going to have this totally legitimate Republican-blessed water project continue. And
in their defense, I don't think they saw this as a threat. I don't think they were thinking, well, he's gonna stop this project that everybody wants. It probably was just a line item.
I don't accept that, because even if that's true, and it could be true, then when they're contemplating it and when he's done it, you should be saying, okay, I'm not going to go with you the next time on limiting Ukraine funding. I'm not going to do this. So you can negotiate at the moment, or you can negotiate after and say, withdraw your termination of this project. Otherwise, I'm not on board for the next big, beautiful bill. And instead, our members, our elected officials, have been dominated and are not willing to rock the boat.
Give me a couple things you think Trump has done that is spectacular and good changes. What has he done that you really support? And you know what the next question is.
I would give two examples. I could give more, but I'm disgusted by the man. But in some policy areas, philosophical areas, I happen to be aligned. NATO. Not having NATO fund its own defense for the last 50 years, I've said for 30 years how dumb this is. It's dumb for us, it's dumb for them, and now we're paying the price for it geopolitically, because we have populations that are totally used to getting the benefit of us spending all the money, us putting lives at risk, them doing nothing. That's not a bad life to have. Totally inappropriate geopolitically, and totally inappropriate in terms of the American economy. Also, higher education in America needed to be slapped upside the head. Now, I totally disagree with how he has done that. But the fact is that we had higher education in America increasingly ridiculously expensive, especially given what it was being done with many of those students in terms of enhancing their future life, and had become ideologically worthless because they were so monolithic and purely liberal. And you had these people who cared so much supposedly about diversity of thought and diversity period and equity, and yet conservative thinkers were subject, and everyone concedes this, to rampant, pervasive, systemic discrimination. So I believe that higher ed needed to become more philosophically reflective of their words instead of their 30 years of action. So those are two areas where I think he's been directionally right.
Not when it comes to his personality and his behavior. Policy-wise, what has he done that is the worst in your mind? What are a couple of things you go, man, that was a mistake?
On the Ukraine, I think it is massively in America's best interests, politically, national security, economically, for Putin to be rebuffed in the Ukraine. And what we are doing there is not only, I think, strategically foolish, but morally reprehensible.
I agree with you. I would also throw in the most dangerous thing I think he's doing is buying up interests in corporations in the name of America. This is something that every conservative free marketeer should stand up and go, no, this one is not what we do. We do not believe in government ownership of industry, because that is socialism, that is fascism, that is government control of private enterprise. We don't do that. And I'd argue almost all the tariff stuff I'm very skeptical of as well. Does Colorado only react to him? Do you see us getting back to a point where we worry about Colorado? There was no way that Cory Gardner, who's just one of the wonderful guys,
yes,
he would have won re-election if not for Trump. I am absolutely convinced of that. it just seems like Colorado now is in such, we're going to go after Trump. Our attorney general has filed 50 lawsuits. You know, he doesn't need to do any. Other people are doing these things. You know, everything is in this lens of Trump and to the detriment of Colorado.
I think if we let Coloradans vote for whomever they want in an election they're paying for, we are going to get back on the trail that you're talking about, where we're a policy leader. And we're delivering more value to our own electorate right here. That our problem is not the electorate. That's the good news in all this. The American people are not nearly as polarized as American legislatures. And American legislatures are so polarized because of an arcane set of rules that the parties have developed that over time have allowed them to slit their own throats. And you could argue they deserve it, but it's not good for America.
Not good for Colorado.
So if we take this step and let Coloradans vote for whoever the hell they want in an election that they're paying for, we will take a giant step towards restoring the Colorado that created the conditions for prosperity, which are now being depreciated and destroyed year by year by year.
Okay, I think I've finally got you figured out. I've put all the pieces together. You have been doing open primaries, which have changed the way we've done things here, redistricting reform that have done things here. You're working on having a true fixed primary system. You're putting all this money into charities in Colorado because you're going to take over the state and you're going to run for office. And you are just pouring all this time and energy because you're power hungry and you're power mad. And this is all about getting you elected to some seat. I have it, don't I? I got you nailed, didn't I?
Well, let me just say, let's look at the facts. In 2016, we ran two initiatives, semi-open primaries and presidential primaries, which was another strike of justice for voters. And everybody said I was going to run for governor. And we all know I didn't. 2018, with the anti-gerrymandering bills at the federal and state level, everybody said, oh, he's spending the money and doing the stuff because he's going to run for office. And then we took on Gallagher 2 years after that. And everybody said, okay, he's doing this once again. And so at some point, people just have to look at the facts. That I haven't run for office. I have no plan to run for office. But in the meantime, I'm going to be one hell of an active citizen.
You have done more to change the trajectory of Colorado politics than I think anyone in a century, as far as getting fundamental changes of law that change how we do things. You're also just an enigma to people because they don't know where you land on issues or personalities or parties. So let me pierce that. Are you going to be endorsing someone for governor? Are you going to be spending your money on somebody to run for United States Senate? You're behind the scenes. You're the puppet master that's pulling all the strings, getting people elected.
No, not at all. It is. I haven't decided if I'll endorse anyone for governor. In general, in my long 16 years here in the state, and I chose to be here. I didn't just get born here. I chose to.
By the way, it's completely off the subject. Colorado has always had this thing that draws people like you to set up shop here, to take risk, to build, to express yourself. This is why artists come here. It's why brewers come here. It's why technicians come here. There was a thing about Colorado as the Wild West, and where a man could write his own biography. I fear we've lost that. I don't know if we're going to bring in the Kent Thirys in the future if we keep going down the road that we're going on. Tangent to what we were talking about, but you're a picture of what Colorado used to draw in.
It's a big deal. I was first exposed to Colorado when I was in high school on a National Student Council trip and fell in love with it. And then it just so happened the type of job I wanted to take after business school didn't exist in Colorado, and I went and lived in California very happily and then less happily. And I moved to Colorado in part because of everything you just said. If I was still living in California now and redoing that decision 16 years later, not at all clear to me that we would move here, because it's changed that much in the 16 years from the place I want it to be more than any other state in America, to one where I don't know what I would decide if I was making that decision again today because of the trajectory. And from a pure data point of view, for the first time, we're actually having declines in our population and more people leaving than coming, especially if you exclude migrants. That's scary economically, and that's scarier in terms of what it reflects about how people view us.
Say more about the trajectory that, and by the way, I feel the same way when my father came out here in 1970, he was drawn the same way I think you were. And I think about it today, if he had 4 young kids, would he leave the East to set up shop here? No, he wouldn't. And I don't think he could articulate it. Maybe you can. Why is it that if you were at the beginning of your business journey, that you wouldn't set up DaVita, which has been this huge employment? You can see it on the skylines of our city. Why would you think, probably not?
The progressive left has vastly and grotesquely disproportionate power beyond its representation in the electorate. That has led to a cumulative impact on taxes, on spending, on regulations that move us from a distinctively attractive category to first kind of a neutral and now to a distinctly negative. I'll give one example. When that AI bill was passed that you referred to, it was the most restrictive regulatory regime in the country. So even Connecticut and California, the governors stepped in and killed their bills. We didn't kill ours. We passed it that day. I mean, I talked to legislators at that time saying, do you realize that there are all sorts of people making decisions across the country, and they're calling us and saying, because of what you just did, Denver or Colorado Springs or Boulder or Colorado is no longer even on the finalist list. You're off, because not only is it a terrible thing you did that could restrict opportunity for your people and innovation for our society, but what it implies for what you might do going forward. So get serious. I'm not moving here. That has happened dramatically since that bill was passed.
And that's just one area of the economic picture here, and the personal picture. People come here to Colorado, because of business conditions, but there's something else here of a tolerance of you do you. Go for it. You're risking your time, your revenue, your family, you risk it. Good for you. And now we're saying, no, we don't want that type of spirit here. We don't want risk takers. We don't want people with a vision that want to try something different. We want to make it uncomfortable for people to start their dreams here. And that is heartbreaking.
And if I can give a micro example now, that I did the macro of the AI bill, which is a hand grenade, a knife in the back of our economy and jobs for our kids. But put that at the micro level. My wife and I have a favorite restaurant. We've gotten to know the couple that risked everything to start that restaurant. And it's a beautiful success. And the customers are happy, and they take good care of their people, and they take good care of the environment. They're model entrepreneurs that anyone would want. And then they took another big leap to open a second one. And it was so exciting. And the regulatory burden that exists has basically crushed them. I actually had them write a memo, which I then took to the mayor of Denver, a good friend of mine, Mike Johnston, and saying, Mike, this is just one example of the tragedies that we're creating when you're forcing this young couple to put $400,000 into something before they can even swing a hammer, because they've had to deal with such a regulatory patchwork and burdensome process.
Growing up here, people valued entrepreneurs, saw them as risk takers, saw that every business is out there and trying to add something to Colorado. And now I think there's a sense that they're just takers, that business is evil, and forget, no, business is us. I think about the 400 restaurants that have gone under in Denver, the minimum wage that is skyrocketing that they can't handle, the Family Leave Act, the environmental regulations, and now the energy codes. it's hard to have a restaurant if you can't have a gas stove. Wrap all this up for me. I think I've got a good picture of what's motivating you with all this. Colorado is a perfect place for you to be an entrepreneur in policy, the way that we have our initiative process. I don't think anyone has been as masterful as you.
You have, but
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can do it anymore because they've made it so difficult for activists.
And I think
it has to have, let me be frank, it has to have somebody with a wallet like yours because I can't pull it off
well,
anymore.
and I think we may need to go back and tweak the system because some people say, well, that gives me an advantage because I can afford it. That's not what I want. I want the people to be able to speak. And so some of these restrictions that some of our political leaders have put in place to preemptively subvert the will of the people, I think we may have to attack that as one of the things in the next 5 years.
One of the beautiful things about Colorado is the initiative process. The checks and balances we, the people, have put on there. Open meetings laws, open records laws, term limits, the taxpayer Bill of Rights, the ethics laws, what you put on with the system for redistricting to get it out of the hands of the politicians. Politicians would never have passed any of those limitations on themselves. It is the safety valve we have,
Correct.
And that the politicians despise. Whenever both left and right hate something, it might be a good idea. Last question: after you're victorious on opening up our primaries, and I think you will be whenever you decide to do that, I think the time is right. What's the next step? What is the next step in Colorado to advance what you see as good democracy?
Well, we're going to collect ideas from people. We've got our own
When you say we, by
list.
the way, is that just you and your lovely wife, your gorgeous, intelligent wife?
No, I work with a network of people. I don't employ them; they don't employ me. But we share a desire for Colorado to reach its full potential and to have a vibrant economy and one where there's huge economic mobility. There's just a bunch of people who are in that category of wanting those things and have given up. And so part of my job is to help bring them back in the game because they have some sense that we can win. When I ran the first initiatives, a lot of people said, what is CEO sticking his nose in there? What does he know? And say, no, I'm a citizen. And I want the citizens to opine on this question. And they did over both parties' oppositions. And so I think what happens next is going to be a product of a whole bunch of conversations, but creating a democracy where voters get to cast a meaningful vote, a vote in a race where the result is not already predetermined by the structure. That's step one.
Kent, thanks for being here. Thanks for being so involved in Colorado. You are. I wonder how these changes will be looked at 50 years from now. That's the perspective I have, and I think people go, those were important. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for being here, for letting me be here.
My pleasure. Think freedom. Did you enjoy that conversation? Well, check out one of these. We have the most interesting conversations with Colorado's most fascinating people. Be sure not to miss a single one. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell icon. And if you can't watch, listen. Check out the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. And by all means, think freedom.